All right, welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. And today, we're really going deep.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're taking a look at Robert Greene's The 48 Laws of Power. Have you ever heard of this?
Oh, absolutely. It's a bit of a classic. Kind of controversial, but it definitely makes you think.
It does. People think of Machiavelli, right?
Right.
But this is sort of like Machiavelli for the modern age.
Mm.
And what we're going to do is, dive into some of these laws, but more importantly, we want to figure out what they really mean.
Yeah, exactly. What's the practical application for us today?
Yeah, because it's easy to just read these things and be like, oh, yeah, that's interesting, but like, how do you actually use this stuff, right?
Absolutely. It's all about the insights, and that's what we're here for.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at excerpts, and the first one we're going to jump into is law number 1, never outshine the master. So just off the bat, what do you think about that? When you hear never outshine the master, what comes to mind?
Well, it's a little counterintuitive at first glance, isn't it? We're often taught to strive for excellence, to stand out.
Right.
But when you think about power dynamics, it starts to make sense. Think about it. If you're constantly showing up your boss, making them look bad, how do you think that's going to play out in the long run?
No, probably not well.
Not well at all. It really boils down to understanding those in positions of authority. They're human too, right?
Yeah.
They have egos, insecurities, and no one likes to feel threatened.
Yeah, especially by someone they're supposed to be, quote unquote, superior to.
Exactly. And Greene illustrates this with a fascinating historical example. You know the story of Nicolas Fouquet, finance minister under King Louis XIV.
No, I don't think I've ever heard this.
So Fouquet throws this incredibly lavish party. We're talking over the top, sparing no expense. And you might think, well, what's wrong with a good party? But here's the thing. He unintentionally outshone the king. And Louis XIV, he was all about his image, his power. This wasn't just a party. It was a direct challenge to the king's authority.
So even though it might have seemed innocent on the surface, it was like he was saying, hey, look at me. I'm as powerful as you.
In essence, yeah. And Louis XIV didn't take it lightly. Fouquet ended up arrested on some pretty flimsy charges and spent the rest of his life in prison.
Wow. That's crazy.
Right. It's a harsh lesson in power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the really interesting part. Fouquet was replaced by Jean-Baptiste Colbert. And Colbert, he was known for his frugality, for making sure all the money went straight to the king.
So he was like the opposite of Fouquet in a way.
Totally. And this is where the real strategy comes in. By funneling everything to the king, Colbert actually reinforced Louis XIV's power. It made him the ultimate source of magnificence.
Ah, so instead of trying to shine himself, he made the king shine even brighter.
Exactly. And it worked. Louis was able to build the Palace of Versailles, which was even more spectacular than anything Fouquet could have imagined.
So what's the key takeaway here? What's the keys to power section say about this law?
Well, it emphasizes that we all have insecurities, even those at the top. And when you outshine your master, you're poking at those insecurities, creating resentment.
Instead of building them up, you're kind of tearing them down.
Yeah. And it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking, if I just show how talented I am, my boss will love me.
Right, they'll promote me. They'll give me a raise.
Maybe. But more likely, they'll see you as a threat and find someone less intimidating to take your place.
Like Colbert.
Just like Colbert. So, what can we learn from this? The law suggests that a bit of strategic flattery can go a long way.
Flattery. Okay, I can see how that works.
But it has to be subtle. No one likes a brown noser. It's about genuinely appreciating their strengths, seeking their advice.
Especially if you're actually smarter than them.
Yeah, that's a tricky one. You got to play it smart. Act a little naive, ask for their guidance, make them feel like the expert.
Because a master who can't impart their wisdom, they might start to resent you.
Exactly. It's all about managing those perceptions, making them feel secure, powerful.
Okay, so that was law 1. Never outshine the master. So what about law 2?
Law 2. Never put too much trust in friends. Learn how to use enemies.
Oh, that one sounds juicy.
Yeah. This one really gets you thinking about loyalty and trust and how those things can shift when power is involved.
So it's basically saying your friends might be more likely to betray you than your enemies.
Well, that's the provocative argument Greene makes, yeah. And he gives the example of Michael III, the Byzantine emperor.
Okay, what happened to him?
He had this close friend, Basilius, and he trusted him completely, gave him all sorts of power, even though Basilius had no experience in government.
So he basically favored his friend over people who were actually qualified.
He did, and he had this uncle, Bardas, who was intelligent, ambitious, had actually helped Michael secure his position.
But Michael didn't trust him as much as his friend.
Right. And, well, Basilius, being the ambitious type, he saw an opportunity. He slowly gained influence, orchestrated Bardas's murder, and then guess what?
What?
He killed Michael, too.
You got it. It's a stark example of how misplaced trust in friends can be fatal, especially when power dynamics come into play.
Yeah, yikes. That's a cautionary tale. So what about using enemies? How does that work?
Well, Green presents a contrasting example. Emperor Sung of China. He was dealing with a bunch of powerful military commanders who could potentially overthrow him.
Right. Sounds like a tricky situation.
Very tricky. So what did he do? He invited them to a banquet, and after they were nice and, had a few drinks, he gave this vulnerable speech, talked about his fears, his anxieties.
He played the victim card.
In a way, yeah. But then he made them an offer. Riches, comfortable retirement if they gave up their commands.
Brilliant.
It was. He neutralized the threat without bloodshed. He used their potential ambition to his advantage.
Okay, so what's the key takeaway here in terms of friends and enemies? The Keys to Power section dives into the psychology of it all. It says kindness to friends, especially when you're in a position of power, can backfire.
How so?
They might start to feel indebted, resentful, like they don't deserve your favoritism.
And the more you give, the less grateful they become.
Exactly. Expectations change. Entitlement creeps in. And on the flip side, enemies can actually be beneficial.
Okay, how so? I'm intrigued.
They keep you sharp. They force you to up your game. And because they have more to prove, they might be more loyal in the long run.
If they decide to switch sides, I guess.
Right. Greene even mentions Mao Zedong. He used the Japanese invasion to train his communist army for the later civil war against the nationalists.
So he used his enemies to prepare for a future fight.
Exactly. It's a strategic way of thinking about adversity.
Okay, so we've got these two laws. Never outshine the master, never put too much trust in friends, learn how to use enemies. What's the overall connection here?
I think it all comes down to understanding human nature. The insecurities of those above you, the complexities of friendships, the motivations of your adversaries. It's about recognizing that power dynamics are constantly at play, and if you're not aware of them, you're going to get played.
Yeah. Like Fouquet, you end up in prison.
Exactly. But if you can understand these patterns, use them strategically, you can navigate these complex situations more effectively.
So the next time you're at work, or dealing with friends, or even facing an enemy, remember these laws. They might just give you the edge you need.
And remember, it's all about using these insights for good. Power can be a force for positive change, but it requires wisdom and careful consideration.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, that's it for this deep dive into the 48 laws of power. We'll be back next time with even more insights, so stay tuned.
See you then.